Hey, welcome to Friday night's video. I hope you enjoyed the last video. And in this video, after we've talked about a little bit about passing tones and passing chords, at this point in the series that you've hopefully gotten to the point to where you're constructing. And I hope the last video on passing tones really made it real obvious to you that what happens in between there is basically is an open field. It has been so open historically that it basically what has created so many different styles, techniques, musical forms, and all kinds of things. The basic concept of where you start and where you stop, those things we outlined. It's the things in the middle that really start to create those things. The other concept can be, one thing we didn't address is rhythm. So with rhythm guitar, I want to keep this very simple because I don't want to, as in with the last video, I don't want to generalize this to the point or try to focus on any certain type or anything like that. I basically just want to reinforce the understanding that if you're experimenting with rhythm guitar and you're going, well, I don't understand that. What am I doing there? Then basically, I want to make you understand that you more than likely do. You may understand it in a very simple form, but you basically do understand it. The most basic simple rhythm would basically be you've got a progression that's like you're hitting G and it's a 4/4 timing and you hit it 4 times. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you basically pick up your pick and you strum in a downward pattern, just 1, 2, 3, 4. So you understand that basically you are playing a rhythm that's in time with the rhythm of the music. Now, as complicated as the rhythm can get, as complicated as the timing signature can get and things like that, those are the things you have to adjust. So the whole concept is the more complicated the actual timing gets, the timing signature, things like that, the more complex that whole concept can get. Now you can get you can also get very complex inside that. So I mean, a very simple elaboration on that is you've got like hitting on the upbeat. So you'd be like da 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 da. You're hitting on the upbeat there. So to try to keep this very simple for you to understand this so that you walk away from this going, I got it, but I need to practice it, is that it's the timing. The downbeats, the upbeats, sometimes in between the up and down beat. So you might have like a quarter note, you might get to an eighth note, you might be in between it at a 16th note, and catching the timing of that is a concept in rhythm that causes more complex rhythms and rhythm patterns, strumming patterns, picking patterns, the way you articulate your strumming and rhythm patterns, that just develops into more and more complex things that you're doing in time with what's going on in any particular measure, in any particular time signature with any type of rhythm pattern that you're trying to follow. So not only can you have a timing signature that's like 1, 2, 3, 4 as a very simple example, but you can have a rhythm pattern underlying in there. That the rhythm pattern is staying in time, but there's a basic rhythm pattern in there. It's like duh, da 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 da. Does that make sense? And you've got this rhythm pattern that's riding inside of this timing signature. And try to keep it that simple in your head. That way that with that very simple relation in 4/4 time, that you basically understand that there's a timing signature inside of a measure that's 4 beats, that you've got a rhythm pattern that's a rhythm that's riding inside of that. Does that make sense? Now, a lot of times the drum section or the bass section is going to be really riding that rhythm, right on it. Whereas the guitar rhythm might not follow it as closely and do other little things happening that are in time, but just adding a little bit extra flavor. Like the bass drum might be going 1, 2, 3, 4, or it might go dun, 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 dun. Does that make sense? In that timing signature, it might be doing this rhythm. Whereas the bass might be elaborating on it a little bit more, and then your rhythm guitar might even be elaborating on it even more. So that's a real simple concept to get in your head, but the basic concept is you're staying within that timing signature. You're trying to hit something on those rhythm parts, because normally on that rhythm there's going to be certain parts inside of that timing signature, inside of that measure, that are going to be accented. And the bass will be accenting them, possibly, more than likely. The drum will be, and you will be. But the bass player might be elaborating, doing some other stuff besides accenting inside that, on that rhythm. And the guitar player might even be elaborating more on it, but still accenting on those rhythm hits. Does that make sense? Inside of that set timing signature, inside of that measure. So I hope I didn't make that too complicated so that you're going, what, dude? What are you talking about, bro? I'm trying to make it so simple that it's just, you know, very simple to understand. That's not saying that you're going to pick up the guitar tomorrow and come off the wall with some really funky time signature that with some really wild rhythm and be able to just, you know, pick up your guitar and off you go. You know, that might not happen. That takes practice, because sometimes getting the timing down in some type of timing signatures, getting a rhythm down that's been placed inside of that timing signature, inside of a measure, and getting it down to where your rhythm pattern is accenting where it's supposed to be and doing other things besides that are fill kind of things, that takes time. So don't be so worried about it, but understand that when you're dealing with rhythm guitar, those are the basic concepts you need to deal with. You need to relate it back to that very simple outline that I just laid out, so that is very simple for you to understand, so you understand what's happening in the timing signature, and you understand that there's a rhythm pattern more than likely inside of that timing signature, inside of that measure, each individual measure, and what your role is in there. Your role is to accent where you're supposed to, and then fill in different ways. In certain types of genres, you may accent and you may do rhythm patterns that are very unique to those types of genres, so you'll have to study them a little bit. And in some things you will be very, how do I say, very, you know, staying within a certain pattern, so that you are very much a part of the rhythm sections. Sometimes you get a little bit more freedom to where, you know, the drum is riding that rhythm inside of that timing signature, and it's accenting where it's supposed to be to get the rhythm going inside of that timing signature and measure, and the bass might be elaborating on it even more with other type of fill things happening and accenting with the drum section, and your guitar might be doing all kinds of things, some very complicated rhythm patterns, you know, that are really coloring up the whole rhythm section. And the more it does, the more you go away from being just part of the rhythm section, and you become almost more of a lead rhythm part of it. So it really depends. It can really expand out how closely you tie yourself into being just part of the rhythm section, or you expand out to color even more to make yourself more than just trying to hold down the rhythm of the song. Does that make sense? So try to keep it that simple in your head, because when you start talking about that, there's all kinds of different things. Very simple concepts whenever you're dealing with rhythm guitar is, you know, hitting where you're supposed to. So you've got, you know, like in a very simple example, you've got like a 4/4, you know, timing signature in their measure, and you've got, you know, one quarter note, each one equals one beat. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes in that measure. So you would have eighth notes, right? So, and then you would have, you know, double that of 16th notes, double that of 32nd notes, and those things help you to define what you do. You can get all the way up to 64th notes and all kinds of stuff. You can get into some really wild stuff, but it can get, the more complicated it gets, the harder it is to perform it, and it takes practice. So the basic concepts of that is you've got some very simple places to start that you will just elaborate on. With that very simple concept for you to get into your head and understand that as you look at more and more complex timing signatures and rhythm patterns, that everything about that's going to get more complex. So you have to work at it. Other than that, you've got some very simple things that are happening there. And the very simple things of that is you're picking. You've got, like downward picking, upward picking, strum or downward strumming, upward strumming. They'll have different effects on you. Back and forth strumming, sometimes hitting, strumming the lower, like you're playing a G chord, an open G chord, and you hit the lower three notes of the triad, down pick, and then, twice, like down, down, and then strum backwards coming up from the top, the higher strings, and you like the first string up on the higher end of the guitar, so it's like da, 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 sweeping like that. Patterns like that develop. But that's the simple concept of that. Or you can just be back and forth strumming, working on different patterns. It might be da 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 da. I don't know. It can get really complicated. But the simple concept is it doesn't really matter as long as you're staying in time and you start accent where you're supposed to be in the rhythm of what's, the underlying rhythm and not getting all out of whack of that. Does that make sense? And that's a very simple concept to understand. Next thing you would have things like hybrid picking, where you'd be picking and using some of your fingers to pluck strings. That's a very simple concept. I'm not going to get into all the different ways you can do that, but it's very simple. And besides that, you get into simple things like just finger picking, to where you're doing plucking, you're plucking, harmonies and all kinds of stuff, plucking it, or you're just finger picking it, roll finger picking it, picking certain strings back and forth, all kinds of different finger picking patterns and techniques, that you'll have to look into, that you want to incorporate into how you play your rhythm guitar. Other than that, there's also things like sweep picking. You can do sweep picking on chords, to really liven up a cross between, your strumming and hybrid picking and sweep picking every now and then, with all kinds of wild combinations that are just unbelievable. And arpeggios, running arpeggios, that you incorporate that and do combinations of them inside the rhythmic pattern of whatever you're doing. So I hope that I'm trying to make this so simple that anybody can get it from a beginner to advanced, that the concept and the tools that you have are very simple. Other things, you have different types of picks. Thick pick, you got really thick pick for, you might to strum with that. You might like that just for lead, I don't know. Really super thin picks, picks that are somewhere in the middle, jazz picks, things like that. Different types of picks, for different techniques that you use. And one guitarist, like me, I can use any one of these picks for whatever I'm doing. I've learned how to use them because it's like, well, I don't know, bro, what kind of pick you got? I don't care. I know if I'm going to be playing some country stuff, and you got this little teeny jazz pick, bro, I'm going to hold it way out here like this, to get it going. But, hopefully that you can keep some picks in your wallet or something, and really gravitate towards certain type of picks for certain types of things that you're doing. So I keep all of them on my guitar, bro, because I change back and forth all the time. So, it's very simple. A concept like that if I'm like strumming the acoustic a lot, I'll use a really super thin pick or one that's somewhere in the middle, depending on what kind of strumming I'm doing. Like flamenco stuff, I'll using this really super thin pick because I'll be playing fast, and at that pick, I want that pick so thin. I want it to give so easy it's not even funny. And it also gives a different texture and sound to when I'm playing it. Does that make sense? Than it would if I was using this thicker pick or a jazz pick or something like that. So those are concepts concepts and ideas that will basically help you decide what picks you use. But it's not that complicated. So when you're talking about rhythm and guitar, those are the things that are happening you have to deal with. Now, we can sit here and talk about, reggae and rock and country and folk music, bluegrass, western, Hindu, whatever. All kinds of different things. But that's not the point. The point is basically you've got this, it's the same concept no matter what you're dealing with there. No, it's maybe different when you're doing it. There's different rhythmic patterns happening in reggae, and what you might decide to play in that you're more likely, if you like take reggae for an example, that you are most definitely going to start looking at what's happening in the timing signature, the kind of timing signature they gravitate towards them. And the second thing is, what kind of rhythm patterns do they gravitate towards, that they play inside of those timing signatures, inside of those measures. And then the third is, what kind of rhythm patterns, strumming patterns, or strumming techniques or rhythm techniques when they're playing the rhythm guitar do they gravitate towards that I need to practice if I'm going to play that type of genre. And it won't take you long for that to sink in, to where when you start to look at it, that it's not that hard of a process to start working out. You'll start to pick it up a lot faster. You'll be like, oh, that's what's happening. It's that timing signature. It's that type of a rhythm pattern. Those are where the accents are. And the guitars, doing those type of strumming patterns or hybrid picking or, whatever they might be doing there, that's a very, genre-oriented thing that happens a lot that I'm going to want to work on. Does that make sense? And then that's when you're working at trying to really perfect working a genre, if that's what you're trying to do, because some people do. They're to gravitate towards folk or country or reggae or rock or heavy metal or whatever, that's what they kind of gravitate towards. Some are more open, especially if you're working on your own style and technique, that you might do all kinds of different things trying to develop cool things on your own. You got this rhythm thing that I do hybrid pricking, this strumming down, up, back, forth, sideways. I incorporate sweep picking into it. I do all finger picking at the same time. I incorporate every kind of thing I can imagine. And you can investigate that. Oh, there's a lot of investigation there of different types of ways you can do it. But most of the time, the basic concept is the hardest hurdle for most guitarists to get over at any level. And especially, some guitarists will gravitate towards, they love rhythm guitar. So they immediately just start strumming. And, and they start to really develop themselves as a rhythm guitarist. Some don't. They really want to play lead guitar. So they basically will chuck all that rhythm shit right off and never really investigate it. And then they'll really struggle, when they've got to play rhythm guitar and do something unique and cool. I'm the same way because I love lead guitar. I just do. And I love creating things like, anything from classical to jazz to heavy metal to alternative things, and I really have gravitated towards a lot more complex things happening. And some of my rhythm were really, I was having problems, and even to this day, I'm really not going to say that I'm the most solid rhythm guitarist, because I really gravitate towards doing other types of things. Not that I can't, but it's not my focal point. Does that make sense? And when I have to, I just figure out, I focus on those things and figure out what I want to do, what's going to fit with what I want to do. And or if I'm gravitating, because I'm not really style oriented at this point. I haven't gotten to the point yet that I've said, okay, well, this is my style and this is what I need to focus on. To some point, but not that hard line yet. So that will come. So basically, if you can get it through your head, those are the concepts you need to focus on and understand. The rest of it is going to be basically you developing into that. So as you progress, as you understand those different things, you're going to go out and investigate them to the point that's you need to for what you want to do. Because I learned my lesson the hard way teaching guitar or music, that if I try to teach everybody to become Paganini or Bach or Beethoven, that they really don't like that, bro. They just don't, because some of them want to just play campfire songs, and you want to get across those basics, and so they can understand the concepts that happen there and what is going on there, what does that mean to them, so that they're going to take it as far as they want. That way, once they get those basic concepts in their head, they can come back and go, okay, well, this is what I'm shooting for. What areas do I need to study in? How can you help me in that area? But once they understand the basic concept of the rhythm and what that means, most of them just take off. They go, oh, got it, I got it. It's a timing signature. There's so many beats per measure. There's some kind of rhythm pattern that's going to happen inside of that timing signature and inside of that measure. It may last one measure. It might last two measures before it loops or goes to something else. And then I've got to work within that in time with some kind of pattern that, some kind of strumming pattern or something, some kind of strumming technique that, accents where it's supposed to, and I can do fill things, and how much I want to color it up really depends on what I'm trying to do. How much do I want to hold down the rhythm section and, not be out in the limelight? And how much do I want to color up the production? It can really depend on the production, how much you want to stand down so you ain't out in everybody's face dirtying up the production so everybody can focus on the vocalist rather than your ass, strumming all over the damn place, and taking away from, what you want the audience to focus on, and you step out in the limelight every now and then, or a lot. I don't know. That can be very personal and depend on who you're working with, how much you elaborate to to your place in the rhythm section when you're being a rhythm guitarist. So that can be very open. Some of them will throw in little licks and runs and all kinds of stuff, like, an Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, whatever, that kind of thing, where they're rhythm, lead, vocals, and they're, they get a chance to fill anywhere they fill it with guitar, something going on, but you've wandered out of being the basic rhythm into melody and lead, that you've left your rhythm place, in that kind of situation, went to playing lead, and then left the rhythm to the bass player and the drum, the rhythm section, while you do some kind of fill or lick or run or melody line. So that's a very simple concept to get in your head. And once you understand that, it basically is just a matter of you practicing that, a matter of you understanding that and working with different things, trying to understand that, you've got things like backbeats, you're hitting on the backbeat, you're hitting on the downbeat, you're on the beat, you're hitting on a backbeat, off the beat on an eighth note, and, and just start practicing. Listen to rhythms, listen to what they're doing, and understand what's happening there, the concept that they're trying to work within that we just talked about, that is the defining factor of the rhythm guitar. And strumming is another concept, that when you're strumming, that you're stroking patterns and how you mix different things in there with them, that you want to look, even get on the internet and investigate rhythm guitar strumming patterns, hybrid picking, finger picking, sweep picking, combinations of those, and you can just have a blast, doing all kinds of really cool stuff, and combining really cool stuff once you understand your role in the rhythm section and in the timing signature, in the measure, how many measures some certain rhythm lasts, and then starting to work within it to do all kinds of cool stuff, as long as you're holding down that rhythm and keeping your place, being part of the rhythm section. Does that make sense? And you can just do all kinds of cool stuff. So try to keep it that simple in your head, the concept, and then just keep elaborating on it. Depending on what level you're at right now or where you see yourself, you have to take yourself back to the basic fundamentals of what I just said in this video and then go, do I understand that fundamental concepts well? Do I understand exactly what he said? And how do I elaborate on that? Where do I go? I understand I'm in the timing signature. I'm staying in time. I understand, what different notes are, if I'm catching on the downbeat on that quarter note, the upbeat, that's an eighth note. In between there's a 16th note. In between even that is a 32nd note. Do I understand that concept? Do I understand that concept of what that means? And am I performing just the basics well? Because once you have the basics down and then you start to elaborate and doing more and more complex things, that you're landing where you're supposed to be in time and understand where you're at in the timing signature, in the measure, and where you're landing in the rhythm pattern, and where the next accent is in the rhythm pattern, depending on what you're doing, and what you have time to fill in, and that you're filling in correctly and in time and landing where you're supposed to be. So that may sound a little bit complicated, but it's that simple. And the more complicated your rhythm technique gets and this type of things you incorporate into your rhythm to try to color up that, because like we had said, that hopefully the drums are really holding down that rhythm. They're holding down the timing signature, the timing of the measures, and they're holding down the rhythm and how many measures that last. The bass is maybe elaborating on that a little bit more, and you may be elaborating on that a little bit more or maybe a lot more, I don't know. But you keep that simple concept in your head. And then you just have to evaluate yourself how well you understand that. And it shouldn't be very hard for you to look at that and basically figure out what can I do with that? What can I add to that? Some little, da 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 da, and where am I at? Can I keep in time? Can I? Oh, where is that at? Oh, bro, I'm lost. And it's like, so you really start out with those basics and then just start working on it more and more and adding more elaborate strumming techniques or adding little hybrid finger picking things or finger picking things or, arpeggio things or sweep picking things that you add into your rhythm. It's like da 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 da. I don't know, all kinds of cool stuff that you can combine into it. That the more you work at it, you start out with those basics and then just start elaborating on them a little bit. Don't be in so big of a hurry, because I found that was hugely detrimental to me, because I'd be like, why can't I do this really super complex rhythm thing? Because I had no idea. I couldn't stay in time. I had no idea where I was in the timing signature. I had no idea where I was in the measure. I was halfway through the other measure on the third beat. I'd be like, what? I wasn't staying with the rhythm pattern. And I was like, and then get frustrated because I was trying to do really super complicated things instead of just starting out basic, keeping that rhythm, keeping inside the timing signature, knowing where I was at in the measure, knowing where I was at in the rhythm pattern, and then trying to slowly and gradually elaborate on that a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more as I was able to stay inside that rhythm pattern, know where those accents were supposed to be, and know where I was at in the timing signature and in the measure and on what beat I was at. So it's that simple. I hope that doesn't sound really complicated. I don't have my guitar in my hand. I don't have a piece of sheet music in my hand. I'm not showing you notes or timing signatures or nothing. That whole concept is that simple. And if you understand the basic concept that is, as you start to approach it and you start to work on the fundamentals and really basic strumming patterns and start to slowly color them and elaborate on them more and more as you're able to, and be able to do them well, perform them well, and know where you're at inside of that timing signature, inside those measures, what beat you're at and where you're at in the underlying rhythm, then they will develop. So just give it time. Don't be in such a huge hurry that you become this awesome wild rhythm guitarist, dude, that's just, whoa, dude. Give it time. Don't, do it basically, do simple ones, and then just start elaborating on them, coloring them more and more as you progress. So I hope I kept that really simple and very untechnical, to where when you start to develop yourself there from at whatever level you're in, that you go back and address it from these very basic concepts and understand where you might be, where you're having issues at, what you need to work at. And if you're beginning or intermediate, it's probably a really good idea, most rhythm guitarists I've seen, that to go back to those very basics and just start elaborating on them. And you will find that your rhythm playing will get way more solid and you'll have way more fun, because when you do start to elaborate on it, then it sounds solid, it sounds good, and you perform it well. It may not be the most advanced, technical wizardry, rhythm you play, but you do it well and it's solid. And when all the other stuff's going on in the band or in your production, it sounds that much better. And as you progress, it'll become more colorful and you'll do it well. And so it'll sound good, and you'll very much get a much better understanding of where you should be in the rhythm section and how much you should be elaborating on it in certain type of productions or whatever type of genre you might be working on, so that you are more of a supportive guitarist. You know, your guitarist, your rhythm guitar is more to support the band. Sometimes you color it a lot, sometimes you don't, that you really want to help be part, you know, your place, you know, in the production, rather than always shining like this really huge bright light in everybody's face, that you are more supporting the production and doing it well. Does that make sense? So that that rhythm is got, you know, it's catching them. Does that make sense? And your rhythm guitar is supporting that really well. And when you do elaborate on it and you do something real colorful, that it's very much a beautiful thing and very much admired, rather than, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, really keep that in mind. So I hope I kept this very simple, so that as you start to investigate, you know, your rhythm abilities and what that means and how you need to develop it, that keep it that simple and just work on the real basics and just start elaborating on that and elaborating on that and elaborating on that. As you elaborate on that and you start to experiment with the very basics, that you're going to start delving into other things, like other types of timing signatures. What does that mean? You're got different types of rhythms that can be played in different types of timing signatures that can get very, very complex, to where, you know, you'd be sitting around going, it's like this really weird timing signature with this really weird timing pattern, and you're all freaking out because you have no idea where you're at in the measure. You have no idea where you're at, you know, in the rhythm pattern, and you're trying to figure out what to do in that, bro. You know, so, you know, start out, that'll come, and let that develop. You'll develop into it. The more you practice, the more experiment, and the more you understand the basics as you move and you experiment with other things, investigate more complex things, more complex rhythms, and more complex timing signatures and things like that, that it will become much easier and you'll perform them much better and be a much better guitarist and a much better musician and a much better rhythm guitarist. So I hope that that basically outlines that for you, so you understand the concept, basically where you have to go, some ideas of what you should go investigate, and then just start doing it. Start really, you know, experimenting and starting out with the basics and evaluating yourself. Can I do that well? And then just start building upon it. You know, start coloring it more and more different combinations of different techniques, and just, you know, different strumming patterns, different ways to strum, different things you can do with your strumming, and, you know, just develop slowly and take your time. You will find that you as a rhythm player will become a much more solid rhythm player, and the rest of the band and yourself will like your rhythm abilities that much more. So I hope that elaborated on that enough, and it kept it simple enough to where you really understand that simple concept and understand it in a very simplistic way, and that what happens as you develop into that. Because as you develop into that and you start studying more and more advanced timing signatures, rhythm patterns, different ways of combining different types of strumming patterns, way of, you know, finger picking and hybrid picking, and different types of sweep picking and finger picking, and all kinds of different things that you can add to it, you know, to make it that much more cool, can really be dependent on what your role should be as a rhythm guitarist in any type of production. And it will be that much easier for you to go look any type of genre or musical form and really have a much better understanding of what's happening there as you're looking at it and listening to it. So I certainly hope that clarified that, so that you pick up your guitar and really start out looking at it like that, and then just start really, you know, analyzing yourself, what you do understand about that, what you need to do to improve, what are the components that you have to follow, and what your place is in it, and understand, you know, how you are going to have to really get it down to where you got it solid, simply, and then the better you get at holding simple rhythm patterns and in time in the rhythm pattern, that you can elaborate on them more and more as you become more solid in yourself being to follow those timing signatures, know where you're at in those measures, know where you're at in the rhythm, and being able to follow the rhythm and know where those accents are, and being able to follow them as you color it more and more, and your technique and your style, and you do more advanced types of things in your rhythm playing. And it's that simple. So try to keep it that simple in your head, and off you go, bro. Peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that this helps you become a much better rhythm player. See you in the next video.